Early last year, I built out a very large 60 plus page multi-step form. I don't have any coding experience or any technical experience, but I wanted to build this all myself. And so I'm going to share the processes that I took to get from the early stages all the way to the final version and how you could be able to do the same thing as well for your business. So let's jump right into it. Just to kind of give you a little bit of context about the purpose of this form, this is for a business that me and my brother have been working in. As of last year, it was a company that we acquired. It was formerly known as Brand 28. We have now rebranded it as Hyvio. Hyvio builds benefit videos for companies, so they're internal videos that share all about each company's benefits. One of the first things that I saw was how complicated the onboarding phase was for our clients that had to renew year after year, and as well as new clients that were just signing up for the first time. The existing process was to have this very large, complicated form. It's 72 pages long and was a lot of back and forth emailing just to get the right information. We could really simplify this by turning this into a simple online form. All of that can be centralized in one place. So the first step was to come inside of Figma or FigJam and build out the user's journey mapped out. I knew that there should be some sort of an intro, and then there should be a chapter marker where there's the sort of progress that you're at, that you can jump quickly from chapter 1 to chapter 2 to chapter 4 if you needed, and you can go back and forth there. So you can quickly jump around to the chapter markers, but then the bulk of the form is in here where all of the customizations are added. So all of the user inputs that they needed to give us, this is where they live within their own card. And it takes them through this step by step. Once they finish one, then it goes to the next card and it goes to the next until they reach the end. Then they gather their information, their contact, and then a bit of a user experience at the end. And then they're at the end of their form. So this was, a very simple UX that I built. There's a couple other examples here, earlier versions that I made before I landed on this one. That felt really good, and I had a good grasp of where to take things. And so this was something that I was really glad I spent the time on. Now this process is a lot faster thanks to AI, because AI can build out wireframes really well, and it can think of things that you may not think of yourself. But I still think it is important to spend time in this yourself and not just rely AI to build it. This beginning phase is so much of the success of your app. It is important to have some human element to this, to think it through and not just rely that AI is going to get it perfectly the first time. Then it was time for me to start designing this. Now that I knew the journey that the users were going to take, it was then time to translate that visually. I was building a lot of this out myself. And so what helped was to just get really specific on a single element, something that I saw really clear in my head, so that I could continue to reference that when I was building out the other cards, so that I had consistency throughout the form. But what I would have done differently is build out a couple of these that were more specific with a couple different variations of layouts that I think were going to be more common, and then to build out those components individually and then have them saved on a component card that I can reference them, grab them really quickly. That would have been a huge time saver. But for this project, I was using what I had used in the past with Figma that had always worked, which was just design how I see it, and then I'll figure out actually how to logistically build it once I'm in Webflow later. And I would just draw things on, and you can see that nothing here really has auto layout. Okay, this one does, so I kind of figured that part out enough, I guess. But everything else is individual. Like, this isn't even a component. This is a single element inside of here. Obviously, I would do that way differently now. I would build out inputs as its own component that I could reuse time and time again. Knowing what I know now inside of Figma, this process, I probably could have, done it 75% faster. So I did learn the hard way. And I think that that's also important, is not to think you have to understand the tool 100% before you jump into something, because then you just stall thinking you don't know enough. And then you're in this learning phase forever and you're not making any progress. I don't think I would have learned it if I was just taking a course on Figma in the same way. So by the time I got to the end of this, I was a little worried about how logistically we were going to be able to build this out. I knew that there was a path that I could do it myself, and I really wanted to figure it out. So I decided to jump into Webflow and build it as I would any of my other existing Webflow forms. So the way that I had it was I have each individual card, and within each card, there's multiple steps. So one card represents, a video, and then within each of that card, there might be 2, 3, up to 9 steps in this case. And then you can see on my right-hand side, this is the single form and all of the inputs in it. And then here, this is where your customer attributes live. And this part is really important that you set up correctly to begin with, because this is really where it's all going to work and tie together. And then this is where you should rely on AI to help you, name them in a clean way, in an organized way, stay up to date, organized, and it'll help you take all this through individually. And I think even now, AI within Webflow could probably do even more than it was doing for me at this time a year ago. So I have this card here that has its custom attribute. And then within each card, this is each step that it's going to show. So this is step 1, this is step 2. And then I have a custom attribute of which step this is on. So this is video card 4, step 2. And then all that logic is built here on the custom code section of Webflow. I went back and forth with Claude and ChatGPT to write out this code. Now, this was a year ago before AI was more integrated with a lot of these tools. So I was going back and forth with ChatGPT saying, this is what I need. This is kind of my naming structure. These are the classes that I have set up. I need it to work like this. And then it would write a lot of that code. I would test it. And then if I had errors, I would just explain my errors back to my AI model. And then we'd go back and forth. And so it was a pretty lengthy process, and the code kind of continued to balloon and grow as I needed more specific logic to happen for certain situations. And by the end of it, we were at about a little over 1,000 lines of code, and that was including a little bit of CSS, but the majority of that was JavaScript. So the first thing that was important was to get that step-to-step logic working, and I was just making sure that the custom attributes that I had assigned every single step was working with the custom code, and that was communicating properly so that when you click continue, it goes to the next step, and then you can fill out your information. So the next part that was really important was just to show the cards that were relevant. So if a user is coming in here and they're not going to select all 58 videos that are on this card, then we want to make sure that it filters them appropriately. So it's just showing the cards that they want. That took a lot of back and forth with AI, and there was a lot of bugs going on. But, after a few hours, I was able to get that to work. And the next hurdle that I had to get over was this skip video logic. Because what if someone selects a video, they preview the video, and then they decide after they preview the video that they don't want that video anymore. Rather than having to go back to the previous page and unchecking it and then starting this whole process again, they could simply just skip that video and go on to the next step. The other things that we had to link up was this progress bar and these progress dots. So these dots represent this individual card that you're on. This is how many steps you have to complete until you are done with this specific video. And this progress bar at the top indicates the overall form, how close you are to submitting. Then we have these chapter markers up here. This is intro, video library, video customization, info, review, and submit. And these ones are grayed out until you reach those chapter markers. And then once you complete a chapter marker, you get this green check mark indicating that those steps are completed. But it was all pretty straightforward. I would just need to make sure I gave them the proper class naming convention that I was using. And once I got that to work and worked on some of the smaller bugs and issues, it was working pretty good. So then I can click through here and add all my plan details. This was just an element I added inside of Webflow, a little bit more context to what users were seeing. And before this was just taking up more of the page real estate on the form. The PDF has all this information that is really important for users, especially if any of it's unclear, but it's all fighting and competing for the user's attention. So this way it just really kind of simplifies it into what the most important things are, and there's still an option for the user if they are confused further and they need more additional context. They just need to hover over this question icon and they'll get more context. The other thing that it needed to understand is once they reached the end of their video customizations and it takes them to the card, that it takes out their contact information and the details that they need. Now, what if a user wants to go back and select an additional video that they hadn't selected earlier? So we thought that we would take them through that process again, but rather than having them to click through each individual step, which could be 30, 40, 50 clicks in order to just get to the new video stack that they need to add information for, that it would skip over them automatically. But if they wanted to, this new edit video button would appear. If they click on that, it will take them then to the progressing steps of that video. Then it brings them back to the end where it shows them the video that they have added to their stack. Another part that was complicated was adding this option A versus option B logic, because you had some videos that were the same, but we had two versions of it. They can review both of them. They can choose the one that they want. And then it shows them the video that they selected with the information that's applicable for that video. Then once the user fills out their information, I thought it was important to include a review and submit so that once they reach the end, they may have had to go back and forth with managers to make sure that all the information was correct. They might have left and needed to come back later to finish it at the end. And so it was important to include here, once again, is a summary of everything that you've selected. Each of the information that is required has been filled out. But if you want to go back one more time and view their information again, you can click on one of these cards. It'll automatically take you back to that card. So you can look at it again and make any additional changes that you might need to before you submit your form. And this is why creating that skeleton was so important, is to map out all of the scenarios that a user might need and not having to click through multiple steps and then realizing they forgot something. And so they have to go back and then they have to click 50, 60 steps again just to get to the point where they need to add that information. So we're just trying to map it out and have that logic so that it's effortless and seamless, and so that user has a good experience with it. And we finished it and had it working within Webflow. And then we decided we wanted to take things further and to take this off of Webflow. We wanted to save all this information inside of a database. And so we've been building out the client dashboard that's going to host this form there and keep all of their information in our database so that when they renew year over year, that they don't have to fill this form out completely from scratch again. They just have to update the numbers that have changed, add videos that might be applicable, remove videos that may not be applicable anymore, and they can quickly make those changes without having to fill out all this form again or have to go back and forth with that existing PDF, which we used to have. So this is what I love about UI UX, is it's very customer focused. You think about what is the user's journey going to be here? How can we make things easier for them, more effortless? This is something I'm really passionate about, is taking something complicated and simplifying it down in so much of an easier, better, bite-size approach that is so much better for everybody who's using it. Last thing is, once the form is submitted, they're redirected to this thank you page where they can fill out their experience filling out the form, and they can ask any additional questions, because that's really important to make sure that your customers feel like they know where they're being directed at or what steps they need to take next. If they have any additional problems or issues, that you are readily available for them, that they can easily reach out to you and you can help solve any of their problems or pain points. But why didn't I build this out completely with AI? Well, I knew that it was pretty big and pretty complicated, and if I was relying only AI to do that, then I think that there could have been a lot of things missed. And at the end of the day, this is part of our product. This is part of our users' experience with Hyveo. And it's really important that we make sure that that is a clean and good and thorough process. You can see how much that I leaned on AI with this, because if it wasn't for AI, I wouldn't have been able to get any of this logic, any of the multi-step form working. I would have not have known how to do that myself. I would have had to rely on something like Formly or hiring out a developer that actually knew what they were doing. You have to just start doing things, and you're going to find that there's mistakes that you make. You're going to find that there was inefficient ways that you could have made more efficient if you had done it a different way. But you're not going to figure that out until you get your hands dirty. So that's the takeaway from this, and I hope that you guys all can take that for yourself with whatever ideas you have brewing in your heads, whatever you're trying to build. But if you don't make mistakes, then you're never going to learn. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching. I'm going to talk more about Hyveo, what I'm doing there, the things that I'm excited about. Thank you so much for watching this video. Give it a like if you found it helpful, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers.